We have with us Mr. James Richardson.
Hey, how's everyone?
Professor James Richardson. And that song, for the audience out there, you hear that song, it's a awesome rap song, and you're thinking, who is that? And I bet you don't know that song was not on a record label. It sounds like I was saying, I thought it sounded a little like Cypress Hill or whatever, but that is actually your tune.
Yeah, I didn't smoke as much weed as Cypress Hill, so it was a different vibe at the time. And it's funny because we've known each other for a little while now, and you probably didn't know. It's, it was one of those things, like as a college professor, you don't really kind of like let out that, there was a time when you wanted nothing to do with academia, and all you really wanted to do was be a hip hop star and chase after big butt women and just and just really, live that kind of like baller lifestyle. But there was definitely during a phase when I was really deep into hip hop. Well, I'm still deep into it, but it's more at that time I lived and breathed it.
I mean, when I heard that tune, I was like, well, first of all, because your the vocals, I didn't like immediately recognize them as you. I was like, oh shit, that's you. And then I heard it, I'm like, oh my god, this shit, like it just, I'm like, this is of the quality that like super fucking famous rap artists, it's at that level. And then you started telling me this story about how, this, I guess, near miss. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's the story of like, you're a filmmaker. It's the story of a lot of people in the arts.
Yeah.
Where
Right,
like, there's
yeah.
like you're struggling, you have some talent, and you're just trying to find an avenue to basically get your stuff out there. And for me, that was a large part of what it was. It was, I had a couple of like near misses.
And this is ballpark. This is what, mid 90s?
Yeah, you're gonna really date me now. It's like, yeah, it was like not even mid 90s. This was like early 90s.
Okay.
The period when I was like in the studio really trying to get stuff out was like late 80s, early 90s. And that's, I was at the time I was working a corporate job, which was, and I think that was also part of the reason that I also had issues getting my stuff out there. It was just kind of like that, like all unsigned artists, whether you're a filmmaker or whatever, you have a day job, and then you throw off your clothes, you like strip out of what you have, and you go and do your real stuff.
Right, create the the illusion of the successful rap artist or filmmaker or whatever.
Right. I was working for an insurance company, and doing data engineering, like, IT work for them. And for me, it was difficult because I would have to leave work at like 6:30, 7 o'clock, travel out to Bensonhurst where the studio was, because I had this like low budget ghetto studio that was like off the grid. And it would take me easily a good hour or two to just clean the corporate out of my mind. Cause like,
Sure, yeah.
I'm getting ready to start, with the bitches and the hoes and stuff like that. And you can't really do that in a corporate setting. So I had to almost had to like flip a switch for me. It was challenges in terms of that, in terms of just getting back into a creative flow,
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I feel like, to some degree, I feel like that even with, like if I do a horror film and just being part of academia, you're like, is anyone, I don't know. It's like, it's not something that necessarily goes a long way. Oh, yeah, I make B-movie horror flicks. It's not like, professors are going to be like, oh, that's lovely. I mean, you like it, but,
I was, dude, I was straight up corporate, and I was terrified that people would find out. And this was like before hip hop was a little bit more like now it's more mainstream because you got people like Eminem, Iggy Azalea, and whoever But back then it was like it was demonized, and I was terrified that anyone I was working with would find out like really what I was doing. But I didn't give a damn because I kept thinking, being a young struggling artist, you were like, well, fuck it, I'm gonna be large at some point anyway, so right. I don't care.
Yeah, this is
temporary.
What I'm doing. I mean, the corporate thing's just how I make the living or whatever.
Yeah. And 20 years later, God help me, I'm
professor though.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
But so that song, what's it called?
The Ill Flow.
Ill Flow. Man, that's a cool tune. So you put together. So you're making this. This is an EP, would you call it, or what was it? Demo.
I was
Demo.
putting together the demo. And this was this song was probably like the last demo, because like most struggling artists, you're trying to find your voice. And that was at a period where, you know, hip hop at the time, the underground setting was, you know, you had a lot of different artists. And it wasn't kind of like uniform like it is now, where like people, a lot of stuff that's out now sounds exactly the same. You know, everyone had to have their own style, their own niche, their own stamp. The worst thing that you could do would be is to be, repetitive of someone else. So, you know, it was a struggle to try to find your own voice, something that was unique, something that was engaging, that people would like, made head bops, but still was still kind of true to what you wanted to do. And it took me a while to kind of find the voice. And this is kind of like the period where I think I was starting to get into that flow. And that was the whole thing with the ill flow. I wanted to come up, you know, because I considered myself an MC at the time. And for me, it was all about the lyrics. You know, it wasn't just about like bitches and hoes and stuff like that. You wanted to be clever. You wanted, like, people who influenced me were like Rakim or socially conscious dudes like KRS-One. You know, whatever lyrics you kicked, you wanted it to mean something. And I came close on a couple of deals. One particularly was like the guys from Public Enemy, Hank Shockley and them. They were, you know, they had funding to do a compilation album of unsigned artists. And they had an open casting call for, you know, rappers, hip hop heads in the New York City area. And me being who I was like, you know, if I'm really going to do this, if I'm going to basically get rid of this corporate thing, which I was hating, I got to really push and get it out there. So I went to the open casting call. And I was like one of the only solo acts out of like, you know, because it was New York during the like early 90s, you know, and, you know, you could throw a microphone and hit an MC on like every corner. Everybody wanted to do this. So the casting call was huge. And, you know, and I remember being like one of the only solo dudes who was there, you know, because everyone was in the groups and stuff at the time. And I just remember being just like terrified. Just like, you know, I'm not really a particularly religious person, but it was like, yo, Jesus, please, you know, just let me come off, you know, or at least don't let me make a decent showing of myself.
Right. Like, I know I can do it. Just let me do it. Yeah. Yeah. So basically you have the chance, you're waiting some horrible long line,
right? Long
time goes by, and then you're up on stage, and what happens?
I kicked it, and I was one of the 14 groups or 14 unsigned artists that they actually called for the compilation album. And they sent contracts, the whole nine. It was, for me, it was kind of like, you know, this was the start of something that, you know, I was hoping would be just...
And it was the guys from Public Enemy?
Well, Hank and Chuck, they were the producers. They were the guys who produced them.
Wow.
And at the time, they were big. I mean, they were they were huge. And that was, if I wanted to do anything with anybody in the industry, those were the guys who I really wanted to do, because I love Public Enemy. You know, I love the music, the sound, the concept. But, you know, being what it is, just you've heard this story 1,000 times in terms of, you know, unsigned artists. You have a project, it gets signed, the funding falls through, and then just like a number of different things, you know, life continues on.
But you were saying it was one thing in particular. Was it Public Enemy put an album out, didn't do well or something?
Right. It was one of the last albums that they did when they before their resurgence in the last couple of years that they put out that was financially didn't do well. I forget the name of it. It wasn't Fear of a Black Planet. I forget which album it was, but it didn't do well. So it seemed that was part of the reason that the funding for the Shockley project kind of fell through. Because I was traveling overseas at the time, and I was hoping, I said, look, if this doesn't pan out here, I was the hell with it. I had a couple of friends who were artists, hip hop heads who basically left the U.S., went to places like Italy, which wasn't the market that I really wanted to basically be in, but, big butt girls was everywhere. So, if you want to be a baller, I'll be, if I can't do it here, hell, I'll be a baller somebody else, someplace else.